All right, hi guys. So today I want to talk about taking a micro versus a macro perspective on your life and how this impacts your ability to achieve your goals. So you might think, is there a better way to think? Is it better to kind of take a macro perspective in which you kind of think about, your holistic capabilities and your ability to kind of achieve your goals? Or is it better to really just zoom in on like the one task, the one moment you have right now and not think about, the whole future of your goal or even your past? Well, so actually, we could use either perspective. The issue that I have seen lately, though, is that a lot of people seem to be using the perspective that is the most detrimental to them in the moment and then using another perspective in another moment. So we know that we see the world around us and we tell a story about it in our minds. And this has a huge impact on our motivation and our ability to do things we want to do without feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Just like in any narrative, we can use our minds to make a macro or a micro perspective. So if you think about this like a story, like a novel, oftentimes we have a narrator that is all knowing, and that is essentially the macro perspective. The narrator tells us everything that's going on. Or we have a first person narrative in which it's a micro perspective that we only know the information that that one person knows. And it's kind of more zoomed in into the world versus the narrator has a zoomed out perspective. The issue that I have been really seeing is that people are taking the micro perspective over the macro perspective or vice versa to their detriment. So when they could really benefit from a macro perspective, they're using the micro. And when they could really benefit from the micro perspective, they're using the macro. So zooming in and out like this makes people less able to achieve their goals because it creates all kinds of kind of stressed feelings of overwhelm, feelings of not really knowing why you're doing something, even burnout. And when you're using the incorrect perspective, it can really lead you down the wrong path and really kind of lead you to feelings of being super unmotivated to achieve the goals that you know you want to achieve. So, for example, sometimes people zoom in too much and they get really, really rigid. So they start focusing on the tiny little things on their calendars and they're like, no, I need to do it exactly this way, otherwise everything will fall apart. And they really lose perspective on why they're doing something. And if you were able to zoom out a little bit and have perspective on why you're doing something, you would be able to have a little bit more compassion and perhaps even more flexibility in your schedule, which would allow you to feel kind of less stress in completing your tasks. On the opposite hand is that sometimes when people zoom out too much and they think about kind of this big goal that they want to accomplish, they feel overwhelmed because the kind of components of the goal are just too much. It's going to take too much time. It's just overwhelming. So what you need to do is you need to zoom in and out in a way that benefits your ability to achieve your goals. And this is kind of how you do it. So you want to zoom out when you need perspective. When you forget why you're doing these things, why you're doing these small tasks, and you need to think about your goal and kind of ask yourself, why am I doing this? And then ask yourself why again. And then ask yourself why again. And eventually, after a few whys, you're going to get to your big why, the real reason why you're doing the thing you're doing. And this is kind of your North Star. This is what's going to guide you in helping you persevere through your goals and through those tiny tasks that feel a little bit menial sometimes. And so this zooming out you can do when you kind of feel like, I feel like this has no point, like there's no purpose to this. And you can use this ability to zoom your mind out in helping you remember, no, this task actually leads to something really important. Like this is actually this is a little part in a huge puzzle, and I'm gonna do this because it's gonna help me achieve that ultimate why. Okay, zooming in is useful when you feel overwhelmed. So a lot of times we have a huge schedule, we have all these things to do, we have a very long-term plan perhaps, and it just feels overwhelming. Just like the sheer volume or the sheer magnitude of something feels overwhelming. So this is when you want to zoom in. You want to zoom in straight into this very moment, and that is all you focus on. If any of you have seen Frozen 2, if any of you have kids, there's a song that Anna sings where she sings about just doing the next right step or the next right thing, something like that. So you want to focus on just doing the next right thing for you. Just the next correct step, and that's all you focus on. You do not think about the future. You do not think about your calendar. You do not think about the future. You do not think about the past. You do not think about your why. You do not care about any of those things. All you do is you have like laser focus, and you only focus on the next task that is the right thing to do, and you don't think about anything else. And if you're able to do that, your sense of overwhelm will really diminish, because you just don't have the capacity to, you don't have to think about all of the things you need to do. You only have to do one thing at a time, and that can really help with those feelings of stress and overwhelm. So remember, when you feel overwhelmed, you don't want to zoom out. You don't want to think about all of the things you're going to do. You want to really narrow your focus and use this kind of micro perspective to your benefit. And when you feel like, your life is really rigid and just super, almost even kind of boring, like you feel kind of like you're like a machine, you really want to zoom out and take that macro perspective and remember why you're doing these things you're doing, because they're helping you achieve that ultimate goal, that fourth or fifth why of why you have this goal, and really kind of like your life's purpose. All right, so, and you really want to make sure that you're using these techniques to your benefit, because a lot of times people will literally do the opposite. They will zoom out when they feel overwhelmed, and then it'll just increase their overwhelm, or they'll zoom in when they've lost kind of their purpose, and it just makes them feel even more like stuck and rigid in their schedule, in their task load, etc. So kind of use your mind to your advantage, because it really is up to you to kind of think the thoughts that you need to think to achieve your goals. All right, I hope this video is helpful, and I will see you guys next week with another video.